Hey everybody, this is Chris from Skeleton. So today's video is going to be a little different than usual. Typically I kind of walk through and show some progress updates for Skeleton v3. However, today I'm instead going to be making a big announcement, which is that Skeleton v3 is now available in a new public pre-release status, which means that you, as the end users, can now actually come onto the documentation site, follow install instructions, and actually install Skeleton v3 and try it out directly. This will be available both in Svelte and for React. React being brand new. This is the first kind of iteration of Skeleton that will work and operate in the React world. So very excited to kind of get that into your hands and just let everybody check it out and let us know what you think. So I figured the obvious thing to do today is just to kind of walk you through and show you what the process looks like for starting a new application. We're going to go through two. We're going to go through one for Svelte and SvelteKit specifically, and another for React using NextJS. So if you're interested in either of those, definitely look at like timestamps for the video, and that should help you jump to the section that you're interested in. Okay, so to get started, I do want to show you that if you're curious, you can come onto the Skeleton repository and see kind of the pre-release versions. We're going to be updating these regularly, so if you're curious to kind of keep up with that, definitely keep an eye on this. But if you have not yet seen the Skeleton v3 documentation, it's available at next.skeleton.dev. Please just visit that, and we have quite a lot of information for you to digest. There's way too much for me to kind of go over today and everything on here. So we're just going to kind of focus on some key sections to just get up and running. So first thing you want to do is go to the installation section, choose the framework that you wish to work with. We're going to go with SvelteKit first. And then you're going to see kind of a big scary warning at the top, just letting you know that this is pre-release software on top of pre-release software, which is Svelte 5, right? And so things are going to be missing. There's going to be bugs. There's going to be issues. Please expect that. Do not use this in production, please. And, if you do run into any issues while you're just testing, come on to our GitHub and our Discord and let us know. So that's all the warning is about. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to follow the instructions. I am a little bit of an old school guy, so I like to use a standalone terminal. So I'm going to use that. We're going to pull this up. And I'm just going to kind of go line by line and kind of copy these instructions in. So the first thing we need to do is scaffold a new SvelteKit project. We're going to use Svelte 5 specifically. Do note that Skeleton v3 only works on Svelte 5. So if you are trying to run this on a Svelte 4 project, you're going to have a bad time. So do avoid that. Our instructions are also showing NPM. I enjoy PNPM, so I'm going to use that, but feel free to use the instructions verbatim if you prefer the other. So we're just going to run the standard Svelte CLI to get started here, and we can give our application a name. I'm going to call it My Skeleton App. I can zoom in just a little bit there to help folks with the tiny text. Hopefully that helps. And you're just going to go through the CLI. So there's going to prompt you for a few questions, a few options here. So the first thing is, do you want some demo files? Is this a library project, or do you just want a bare bones project? We're going to go bare bones. We just want a nice empty project. You can opt to use TypeScript or not. We're going to use TypeScript. I'm a fan. I appreciate that. And then there is a set of options here. These are kind of up to you, and it depends on your project. Are you going to do unit testing? Do you want to do prettier? Things of that nature. So for now, I'm just going to toggle them all on. They have their use, but we're not going to cover those today. The important one, though, I do want to call your attention to is the Svelte 5 preview. If you do not choose this option, it will not install Svelte 5, and you will not be able to use Skeleton v3 successfully. So make sure you check that option. It will go ahead and generate the project for us there in the background. We're going to go ahead and cd into the project files here. Let's see. Skeleton, and then I'm going to do a pnp install, or that would be npm run install if you're using npm, and that should get us pretty much set up. I think they also recommend a way to do like an initial commit, so I'll just kind of copy that in. Sure, why not? And then I think and then from there it's just a matter of run dev to run our dev server. And let's take a look. So we should have a new empty SvelteKit project, which we do. So That's worked exactly as we hoped. So I'm going to go ahead and kill the server here, and then we're going to go ahead and go to the next step, which is to install Skeleton itself. So you may be familiar in Skeleton v2, we split the project up into two packages. We have a core package, or our skeleton package, which is contain the skeleton, the Svelte components. And then we had a TW plugin, which is the Tailwind plugin for skeleton. We've now kind of flipped things around. The core, the plugin is now in the core, and components are now in their own kind of dedicated package, which is semantically labeled here. So you're going to see the core package, which is the plugin, and the -Svelte package, which is the components. Both are tagged with this @next tag, which represents, a cutting edge version of the tools. So do make sure you install the version listed very specifically. And again, I'm using pnpm, but you can use regular npm if you prefer. So we're going to install that. That should go very quickly and easily. Don't worry if you see any kind of like pure dependency issues. So a lot of that is related back to Svelte itself and being, in a pre-release status. Now we need to also set up Tailwind on our project. You are welcome to go and follow the official Tailwind documentation for this. Personally, I prefer SvelteAdd, which is just a nice little like CLI for just kind of automating this process. It sets up a lot of the default files that you need and things like that. So we're going to just kind of copy this in, and I'm going to do, I believe I can just do, yes, there we go. And you're going to see it's going to install that. It's going to say done. We do put a step to install the dependencies, but I think their recent update now does that automatically. So I'm just going to install. Okay, everything's up to date just to make sure. We do put a little warning here if you see something went wrong during this step. Don't worry, it's still working. It's just a kind of a small issue on their side that, again, maybe something related to the structure for Svelte 5 and things like that. But technically, all the files should be set up, everything should be configured, and it should work exactly as you want. And in fact, if we want to test, we can run our dev server again and come here and look. And yeah, you're going to see the Tailwind reset kicks in, the styles are normalized, and you lose, the paddings and things like that are default to the browser. All right, kill the server again. The last couple steps we need to do first, we need to set up the Tailwind config, which was handled by, was created for us through the SvelteAdd process. But if we go and just do this directly, you're going to see a couple like warnings with, can't find, this particular file or whatever. It's optional if you want to do this, but go ahead and install the node types. That will just resolve those warning messages, and so it doesn't look like something's wrong. All right, folks. So we're going to go ahead and install the dependencies we need here. So I'm going to again do pnpm for the types. Let that install. That should be good to go. And then you're going to see there's a few kind of configurations we need to make to the Tailwind config itself. So let's open that, which will be in the root of your project here. And we're going to see there's 3 imports that we need to add. Let's kind of talk through those real quick. So the first one we're going to use for resolving a path that's going to be provided down here in the content section. The second is the skeleton plugin itself. You can see the import path for that. And the third is just importing all the preset themes so that those are available for us to configure and use. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and add the content section here. If you're not familiar, this is a carryover from v2, so this may look familiar. But essentially what this is doing is resolving the path to where the skeleton components live in the Svelte directory, the Svelte project for that. So the styles are picked up from those are put into your bundle and ensures that the components have styles in our display, because otherwise those styles would be excluded from your Tailwind bundle, and that would not be good. We're also going to go ahead and add the plugin here for skeleton. You can see there's a setting kind of provided already to provide themes, and a couple themes already configured. You don't have to have multiple themes registered up front like this, but if you want, if you want to be able to quickly switch between them, we do kind of show that as the default. So just know that that's what that's doing there. We're bringing in the plugin. We're going to say we're going to have a couple themes. We're using a couple of the preset themes, which are part of that imported path. And then the 2 names of the themes are Cerberus and Rose here. So 2 different themes that we're going to have access to. The final step is going to tell you to go into your app.html. So we go into source, app.html, and you're going to see there's your body tag right there. And that's where we're going to want to add this little attribute. And so This is the other half of the theme config. First we register the themes, then we come here, and this is what decides what theme is actively displayed. So I'm going to apply that. We're going to go npm dev again, and then we're going to take this and open this in the browser here, and you're going to see a couple changes. Now, background color has changed. This may look different for you depending on whether your current operating system is defaulted to a light or dark mode. So this is one of the first v3 specific changes you might notice. If I go in here and do system settings, display, and I change to light mode, you're going to see the site kind of updates with that. So just know that that's kind of what's going on there. Is it's defaulting to whatever your operating system default kind of theme system is there. So I'm going to move this terminal out of the way, and if you're curious, you can change this. This is just using the default Tailwind light and dark mode system. So if you're not familiar, you can add a property here at the top called dark mode, and then you have essentially two options that you can set. You can select selector, which is I'm going to define a class that kind of hard codes to a light or dark mode, or you can do media, which is the default. The media just means it will change based on the CSS media setting, which is the operating system option. Again, we just kind of demonstrated. So if I want to change this manually, I can go to selector and then come into your app.html file. You'll see that the app kind of updated in the background. We're just going to add a class here on the HTML element and say dark mode, and then boom. We now have direct manual control over flipping between light and dark mode on demand. So that's how you do that. Very similar to V2, so if you've gone through this manually in V2, you should be familiar with this. Similar to how you set the theme, the value that's defined in this class, either no class or the dark class, that will toggle the value either way. The cool thing with this is we can kind of mix and match, so we can use our rose theme that we pre-registered, and we can see that kind of used in here. We can see the rose theme in light mode and have that kind of displayed here. And it's all just a very quick system to kind of toggle between those. You may be curious to learn, like how do you do like a light switch from V2, or it's like a toggle. That's going to be a little outside of the scope of today's kind of intro tutorial, but just know we do cover that, or we'll cover that in the documentation section. Keep an eye on this little dark mode section, and it'll kind of cover some of those details, including the selector and media mode that we were just talking about. All right, so we have our basic application here. We've got the theme configured. We've got a few things kind of ready to go. We've got our project essentially scaffolded and ready to go. So I do want to kind of point out just a couple sections that may be relevant before you dive into actually implementing, features and things like that. We have added a couple sections up near the top here called fundamentals, which you can kind of think of this as like a guided tour of how should I kind of approach the documentation and learn about all the new features that Skeleton v3 is providing. So if you're curious about our Figma design assets, if you're curious about the design system, buttons, badges, or anything that comes from the Tailwind plugin, or just, a general kind of high level of overview for how components work, how do I add properties, how do I import, things like that. That's kind of covered in a quick manner here. The plugin is covered in a little more detail here. The plugin is relevant because a lot of the core features of Skeleton come from the plugin. So this is everything from your theme system to some of the basic classes and some of the like preset options and typography and a lot of those things that are very crucial to your application. Those are framework agnostic, provided just by that core package that we installed earlier. So if you're kind of curious where that divide is, like what's in the core and what's in the components, we kind of cover in detail what the plugin provides right here. And it's kind of details by various sections, like what classes specifically it adds, what features it adds, on and on and on. So quite a lot in there. And the cool kind of thing about that is that if you do not need components, or you are willing to kind of build your own component system, maybe for a framework that we don't support yet, like Vue, you can still access and use all of these features with the only kind of dependency being Tailwind. So you create a new Vue or a Next application, you install Tailwind, you install the Skeleton core, and you can use all of these features right away. So very cool kind of way to approach that. You don't have the components, obviously, but we're looking into expanding to additional frameworks for stuff like that. We talked about dark mode, and just again, I just want to call that out so that's fresh in your mind. Design system stuff. So this is the stuff that I actually want to kind of dive into. So we have the theme system that we were just talking about. We kind of cover several different topics here around themes. So first, what preset themes are available. Where do you import them from? Maybe if you want to create your own theme, we link over to the theme generator here, which is linked both here and in this themes button at the top of the page. We talk through the process of actually like generating your theme, copying the code, how you import that. For today, we're just gonna skim past that. It's a really cool process, very 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 simple and and comparable to V2. But just for the sake of time, we're just going to use some of the presets. How you activate your theme, and then even like how you override and customize and extend, enhance your theme. So there's quite a lot of information provided here if you're curious about anything theme related. Likewise, we kind of cover the color system. So we have a much more extensive color system in V3. This doesn't just mean more colors, although there is this new 950 shade kind of provided for each color value here. Provides a little bit more contrast, a little darker tones. But we also kind of show you how you kind of generally use those. You can use, for background colors, you can use primary, you can use for border, you can use fill colors, any of these properties that are listed up here that are provided by Tailwind utilities you can use. So background colors, accents, fills, etc., etc. We also kind of briefly cover color pairings, which I'm going to kind of circle back to, but just know that that's essentially us balancing, hey, in light mode it needs to be this tone, and dark mode it needs to be this, and automatically switching between that. So if you're kind of curious what those like canned pairings are, we kind of demonstrate some of that information here and kind of show you a couple examples of utilizing those kind of combined tones to automatically switch. Think of it as like shorthand for base plus dark modifier color tones in Tailwind. Presets, we're gonna kind of skim past this because we're going to show this in a practical manner. Typography, again, I'm going to skim through a couple of these things. Spacing I've covered in a previous video. If you're curious about that, go check that out. And iconography is very similar to V2 in that it's still agnostic. You can bring your own solution for icons, or we are kind of making a first-class recommendation for Lucid. Lucid is just a really, really nice tool for icons. It's framework agnostic, so you can use it across all these different tools, and just looks really nice. Nice display, easy to use. It's tree shakeable. It has pretty much checks all the list of items that you want. We do kind of list some alternatives down here if you're curious to like what other options can you use, but for the most part, just know that we're recommending Lucid. All of our examples and code snippets in our documentation will show icons using Lucid. So just know if you see those, that's where that's coming from. We do provide links to the instructions for installing that if you're curious. And in fact, a couple of examples I'm going to show may do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just follow Lucid's instructions here. We're going to come into our project. I'm going to install Lucid Svelte. And that way, if I use any examples that have icons, they'll just work. So that's it. That's the entire process. Very, very simple and easy to get started. Okay, enough talking about the docs. Let's dive in and try some fun stuff. So we have our little test project here. Let's go ahead and open our main page. So we go into routes, our initial page. I always like to do a little bit of padding just because I hate when everything's kind of bumped up against the side. So that's just going to make that look a little nicer. We have our usual skeleton typography system. So if you do an H1 class, you're going to see that's kind of formatted the way you would expect it. We also have anchor class, which again is kind of returning from skeleton V2. That will give our links kind of a nice little kind of color based on our theme system. And then we can do something very similar to V2 where we can add a button, and we'll just give it a name button. And that's going to create kind of a clickable button here for us, though it's not really styled, right? It doesn't really look too great. And I have a little spacing here just so that this looks a little nicer, so it's not everything's all bumped together. Then we're going to use something new, something that's new to V3, or kind of updated for V3, should say. So you may be familiar with the V2 iteration of variants. So if we come in here and look at variants, this is just a way to have kind of can styles for, oh, I want primary tone, I want, this ghost style or soft style or ringed or, glass, gradient, so on and so forth. This is sort of the successor to that pattern. We didn't really like the term variant because it's very open-ended. It also conflicts with some terminology that Tailwind uses internally. So we've decided to rebrand, rename it presets, and extend it to be a little bit more powerful. So all this is think of it as a can set of styles for background colors, text color, and fill colors for icons or SVGs. So just providing those in such a way that you have a background fill that looks really nice and a nice contrasting tone, regardless of like what combination of colors you're using here. So the easiest way to show this is we're just going to do preset filled, and by default this is going to use our neutral style, which is displayed right here. If we toggle light and dark mode, you're going to see that kind of remains nice and neutral. It's not blue or green or any of the other kind of color tones from our theme. It's just nice neutral white and black. That creates us a nice, very, very, very nice white button. If we switch between light and dark mode, it flips to the nice opposite there. But we can go a step further. So in V2, we had this way where we could kind of, we had only a handful of options for like the field. You could do primary, you could do secondary, tertiary. But, if you've looked at our color system, you should know we have like shades from 50 down to 950. I was like, where is all those other colors, right? Where do those come in? And those weren't available to us. So what we've done is we've now provided that for every tone. So you can now use preset, you can say filled, whatever color tone you want. Like let's go with primary, and then the kind of neutral or center of our color pairings is 500. We'll save that and take a look, and we get a nice blue button, which is our primary tone. Now we can also do, as I was mentioning a moment ago, the color pairings where I could do 50 and 950, and we could save that. And now we have a nice dark button here, and then if we switch to light mode, nice light button here. So it's adhering to that light and dark mode color balance with the color pairing system. So this is doing, while this looks like a fairly long class name, what this is doing behind the scenes is essentially saying, in light mode, it's going to be this color. In dark mode, it's going to be this color for the fill. The text color is going to be this in light mode, this in this dark mode. And if you have icons or SVGs, the fill color is going to be this and this. And so it's like 3 different values with both light and dark values, all just kind of combined into a nice kind of compact singular class for you, which has a syntax that's very similar and very, very easy to pick up. It's very similar to utility classes that you've seen in Tailwind. The other cool thing is we have multiple styles. So we don't just have filled, we also have tonal. Tonal does not use multiple shades just because it's a little too hard to balance that. So if we do tonal primary, we're going to see we get this kind of nice sort of faded looking button, which is very similar to the style we were just using. We also have outlined. So if we do outlined, we're going to get, outlined. By not providing any additional values, it just defaults to the neutral if you're curious about that. You can see there we go. We have a nice like outline button. Let's switch back to dark mode, and there we go. It's lots of different options, and obviously you can kind of start to. You may be like initially, asking yourself like, what is the benefit here? What is this getting me? So let's try a more practical example. So let's go primary 500. Nice blue button. And then let's use another type of element that we provide. Cards. Cards are pretty common in something like an application you're building. So let's go ahead and create a div with a card class, put our button inside of that. And let's just take a look at what that does. So initially nothing. There's no visual distinction of what's going on. And the reason for that is we've not provided a color. So if we do background green 500 or something like that, you're going to see, let's see, background, oops, I'm sorry, I put it in the wrong place. Background green 500. There we go. Now we have a green card. little jarring, doesn't quite fit with our system. Add a little padding here so you can see it and looks a little nicer there. Not exactly what we're going for, right? We want something that maybe looks a little more neutral, fits into our theme. So again, we can use those preset styles to help us out with that. So I'm going to do preset outlined, and we'll just go with the neutral version for by default. And we're going to see it gives us a really bright white kind of outline, which is a little jarring. But we have the presets, we have outline styles, we have all these different combinations that we can use for every color. So if we want, we can say, okay, we want to use the surface color and go, let's go just like a step up from the background color. So let's go 100, 900, take a look, and there it is. It's really hard to see. It may not even pick up in the video capture. So I'm going to go a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more. It's just so you can see that there's that outline. And again, it's combining lots of different classes together into this kind of small sort of bundle. If we even hover it, you're going to see kind of there's a lot going on inside of that as far as what styles are being applied. So really, really cool kind of concept. Can be applied to pretty much any of the elements. So badges can use this. You can kind of see a combination here of presets. Buttons, you can see a combination here. Different ways you can kind of mix and match. You could actually combine a couple different presets. So you had both sort of a fill and an outline, and you kind of mixed and matched those. You could use a preset only in a hover state, so you could have something like maybe when you hover the card, we use the exact same sort of syntax there, but we just go with something a little bit brighter. So let's see what that looks like. There we go. We now have a little bit of a hover state on our card when we go over that. So again, lots of ways to mix and match. These are just extensions to the utility classes that Tailwind provides. But, even with just a few combinations, you can kind of start to see lots of different options for how you construct and build these. And in fact, we actually show some guidance around, here's a use case for something like that. So if you wanted to create a button group, we're actually showing you that exact process of essentially using class we provide, a bunch of primitives that Skeleton provides as well that you can kind of mix and match, and then just using your own like button styles, hover states, and so on and so forth. And you can provide something pretty cool. So that's 3 different presets, one for the card, one for the normal button, and one for the hover card. And that provides a really kind of nice interface for what you can do with just a few combinations of those very primitive classes. Okay, so that is the Tailwind system. Now let's jump over to something even more exciting. So let's take a look at some components. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to start with the avatar. You can see if you go to any of our component pages, you're going to see both React and Svelte kind of denoted here at the top. So if you want all the details about how do I implement this component for React, or how do I implement this component for Svelte, all it is detailed here. Likewise, you're going to see if you look at our code snippets or code examples here, a lot of you are probably going to be very excited to look at these because we're providing complete examples, whereas like in previous versions of Skeleton, we only kind of showed you like what was changing in each code block, right? Now we show you the full thing, the whole process. So if you're curious to replicate this, we can come in here and just kind of follow the import. I'm going to bring that in here. In fact, I'm just going to copy this entire page because we're okay to just replace what we have. So let's save that. Come over here and look, and we now have an avatar. Let's go ahead and add our padding back again. So padding 10. P10. There we go. Okay, now we have an avatar here. Similar to previous versions, there's a set of properties available to every component that you can change. We're defining the source and putting an image URL in there. Changing the alt text for this. So if we wanted the alt to be Jane or something like that, we can change that. And again, very similar to previous versions, you can use things like set like background colors. If we don't do green, 500, and then maybe take our image off. Okay, let's take the whole property off. Yeah, you can see the avatar is created there with the tone that we're looking for. We also have things like size. So if you want to do size 24, that'll create a nice big avatar that's a little bit easier to see. Let's even go bigger. Let's go huge avatar. There we go. Now we can really see. Let's call her Jane. So very familiar if you've used Skeleton in the past, this way of setting a property, providing a utility class from Tailwind to be able to provide some customization. Now, the cool thing with Skeleton v3, and this is again another drastic, or drastic's too hard of a word, another exciting change, interesting change, is kind of detailed here in this fundamentals page. If we come into components and we look at style props, you're going to see this kind of explanation of how we've changed our style properties for components to make it much easier to reach whatever you're trying to customize within that particular component element. So let's kind of walk through like an imaginary scenario here. So imagine we have a figure, and then inside of that we have an image tag, and this is our component. This is what's inside the avatar component. That's the template for it, right? So in previous versions of Skeleton, we kind of had these like built-in base classes that was saying like background is, this by default, and the size is, 24, and all these kind of things were just sort of built into the component, and you didn't really always have access to it. Sometimes we would go in there and we would add something like a property that lets you kind of set that size, and that would be passed in, something like this would be passed in and set on that. But we've tried to change that up. We've tried to make this much more modular and much more accessible. And so the way to think of this is there's essentially 3 different types of style props. We have base styles, we have individual styles like background color, and then we have classes, which is arbitrary classes that you provide to extend the class set for that particular element. And so what this is doing is, if you come in here and you look at the documentation for the avatar, let's take a look at this. Avatar. Pin this. You're going to see there are, kind of the usual properties you're used to, setting a source image, setting an alt tag, but we have properties for setting base styles, background color, size, font, lots of things you're used to. And then down here we have some kind of things that are maybe a little more, new or unique, like image base and image classes. And so what this is doing is essentially copying the same concept and applying it down here as well. So instead of being just the base, this would be what we call the image base, or the image background, or the image classes. And you might be wondering the names or what those represent. So think of it like this. So base classes are the styles that we, as the creators of Skeleton, have kind of provided our sort of opinionated styles for what are the defaults for the structure, for the design of that particular element. Any of the properties that you're used to kind of configuring, those are passed in here. So this could be background, or this could be, image size, something like that. It could be any number of those kind of style properties. And then we have classes, which are extra classes that you want to pin. So if there was not a property that existed, maybe there wasn't a border property that didn't work for you or something, you could use classes to extend this with your own set. So you could say border and border green 500. Let's make it like a real big border so it's very obvious. I'm going to comment this just for a second, name that properly, and let's go take a look. And so by providing these kind of arbitrary classes, we can essentially go draw outside the lines. We can add styles and customizations that are not provided by either the base styles built into the component, the properties that you are customizing, such as style or background, margin, padding. And you can go a little bit further. You extend that class list with your own set. And so that's where classes comes in. Name is we're calling it classes with a plural, in case you're curious, just because we don't want to conflict with the standard class attribute. So if you're used to seeing class and you're like, why is this class, not class, not classes instead of class or whatever, that's the reason for it. But just understand behind the scenes, this is what we're doing. We're essentially kind of wiring these together and providing it in this kind of modular fashion for where and when those classes are provided in the class list inside of the component. Now, the cool part about this is it allows you to access not just items on the parent element, but you can actually access stuff inside further down, right? So you can actually see, if we do image, we can actually append custom classes that are only applied to the image tag itself. So if we wanted to do sepia, which is a property that, a utility class that Tailwind provides, we can come here and take a look. And now our border is gone and the image has been given this nice sepia tone. So it's not the figure that's being applied, that the style is being applied to, it's just the image tag. So again, lots of ways to access classes on the parent, on the children. You can adjust the base styles. You can replace all the styles that we provide by default with your own new set of base styles. You can change each individual property itself, and then you can extend the list of classes with the classes property here. So it's a little bit weird. It's a little kind of, foreign for you. I'm sure the first time you're seeing this or hearing this, but just understand like the concept is the same for every component. You have that exact same system of base, property, and classes available for every element within inside every component. So it gives you quite a lot of access to a lot of different features. And so if we went to a little more complicated component such as tabs that has more elements inside it, you're going to see there's quite a bit more you can kind of drill down into. Anything that's not prefixed is applied to the parent, so it'll say base in most cases here. Anything that does get kind of applied, we'll kind of show. The progress element is probably a better one to show. So you can see we have our base styles that are being applied here, such as background, width, height. And then very specifically, if you want to adjust the meter, the kind of visible meter here, those properties are prefixed with the word meter. So allows you to kind of pick and choose where the styles are going to get applied in that overall component structure. So really cool concept. I think people are going to be very excited about this. I kind of skimmed past it, but the fact that you can change the base styles means you can essentially create your own headless components. So we will obviously have our defaults provided, but you can override the base and essentially start from the ground up for what classes are applied, what styles are applied to each component. So really cool approach. I'm excited to see, as folks get more hands on this, just to see what sort of values are provided there. Now you might be kind of curious, or might have picked up on the fact that when I'm showing the components, I'm showing the React version for the API reference for all of these properties. If you come over to the Svelte equivalent, you're going to see that list is missing. So just heads up, that is coming. We are going to provide that for Svelte as well. There's just some technical hurdles that we have to overcome. You have to remember Svelte is not in a full stable release. And so some of the tooling around, how we pull that data and automate how that information is gathered is just not yet possible to do. So we're waiting on Svelte to hit a stable release, and then we'll come back, revisit, and add the same sort of properties for here. Because again, all of that system is automated. It's tooling that's actually pulling that information and being used to display the information on the page. But if you're using React, or even if you're using Svelte, you can come and take a look at the React reference. A lot of those values will be very similar, if not the same. And then if you're using, VS Code or a similar tool, you're going to see suggestions as you kind of come in here. So if you do, I think it's Command-I, on a Mac, you're going to see a suggestion of all the properties that are available. So if we look at size, you can see it takes a string value, which is a class, and it sets the size property. So just a quick way to suggest those. Or you can just start typing and it'll suggest whatever value is there. So a couple different ways to discover and understand what properties are available for each component. Okay, so that's components. Let's also kind of cover quickly this cookbook section, which is a new documentation section here at the bottom. If you're not familiar with the term cookbook, it's used for tools like OpenAPI and a few others. The general idea is they're providing a quote-unquote recipe for how you construct something. So think of these as like little mini tutorials for building a specific thing. In this case, a particular type of UI or interface or whatever. And so we have a few we're kind of playing with and kind of stubbing out here. How do I create breadcrumbs? And we show you, here's the mix of Tailwind and Skeleton utility classes that you could put together and use to then generate, breadcrumbs. Or maybe something like a full chat UI, which is a much more complex interface, which would not typically be your standard component, right? That would be a block section or something that's built with several different pieces and maybe has some JavaScript logic and has looks different for one user versus another, right? So just providing kind of an opinionated guide on how you might construct those interfaces. So we're real excited for this. This will kind of work as a little bit of an overflow of like, okay, it's not a primitive, it's not a component. Where does that fit in? The cookbook will be kind of the catch-all for those additional kind of guides and stuff like that. So keep an eye on that. Again, real excited for what's going to kind of come from that. Okay, so that covers the majority of the basics for our SvelteKit application. So real quick, I'm going to switch over, and we're just going to kind of run through, just kind of speed run it and do the same thing, but for a NextJS project. So I'm going to come back into my terminal here. I'm going to go back up to my little parent directory here. And we're going to come back to the installation section. You're going to see a NextJS option. And very similar to the skeleton process, you're just going to be able to kind of go through these line by line. I used PNPM in the previous version. So for this one, we'll just do NPM. So I'm just going to copy everything verbatim. We're setting up a NextJS application here. Oh, the name is already used, of course. So let's rename the application. Let's call it my NextJS skeleton app. And it's going to have a few kind of recommendations kind of laid out here. Do you want to use TypeScript? Yeah. Yes, yes. Definitely we want to go ahead and pre-install Tailwind. Yes. We can keep the default directory and use app router. And then, yeah, just defaults are all fine here. It's going to go ahead and create that directory project for us, install the dependencies for us. And that way when we go my NextJS project, I can now open that in VS Code. Boop, boop, boop. Here we go. I'm going to zoom in again so you guys can see at home. It's created the project. So we have our empty NextJS project. If I was to do npm dev, we can run that. We're going to see on localhost 3000. It's going to show our little kind of preset or default NextJS landing page here. Now there's a few things just like the SvelteKit application we're going to need to set up. So first of all, we need to install the skeleton core and the skeleton React component package. And both of those are, again, have the suffix for the @next tag. So we're going to take this, let's kill the server, install. Okay, we've installed skeleton. And since NextJS is nice enough to install Tailwind for us, we get to skip that step, go straight to the Tailwind config. So let's go ahead and open our Tailwind config, which will be in the root, just as the same as before. They're going to make those exact same types of changes. We're going to import those three imports at the top. We're going to come down here and copy our content section that we're going to add. You're going to notice there's a little bit more in the content section by default than there was on the SvelteKit side, but just again, leave all the defaults there. Those need to be in place. And then let's bring in our plugin as well. So we come in here and plug in and set that up. And now our configuration is good. Very similar to before, we need to go into the source app layout.tsx file. So the right here, and you're going to see there is the body tag provided here, and we're going to do just like we did before with the data theme, and we're going to go ahead and apply that here at the end. We're going to do that, we're going to save, and then we're going to be npm run dev to run our dev server again. And then when we restart, we should see, there we go. So that should be working. It's not going to look visually different for us by default because NextJS has all of these kind of default styles built into the page. So let's do something real quick. So let's come in here and we're going to see, oh, they have a global style sheet provided here. We're going to look in here. Oh, they're providing all these kind of default styles for us. Let's just nuke those and remove those. And then boom, you're going to notice the background kind of has that subtle change between light and dark mode to now kind of remove that. And you're going to see a kind of a gray background instead of a black. And similar to before, if we come in here into our Tailwind config and set dark mode equals selector, it's going to default to light mode. So we've now used skeleton to, inadvertently style the kind of default styles for the NextJS default landing page, which is kind of cool. You're seeing those changes just immediately applied. And again, similar to before, if we had class equals dark, we now have that in our manual control to be able to change this at will. Oh, class name, sorry. React. So there we go. We now have a dark mode equivalent here. If we go ahead and look at sort of the default page here, you're going to see here's all of those kind of default styles that they're providing on the page. I'm just going to kind of nuke all of that. We're going to do P10, and then we're going to do H1 to H1, hello skeleton. Let's just make sure, yep, there we go. We have our typography is working. If we come in here and add a button, so we'll do button, we'll do button. We're going to use our preset styles, preset fill. We'll do tonal primary. I'm also going to add a little spacing between the elements so that that's not too like bumped together. There's our little button style, and if we come in here and look at our avatar, we can look at the snippet code and see how that's kind of imported. Very similar to before. So we go ahead and, import our avatar component. We go ahead and set a variable for what we're going to use as the source for our image right here. And then we can actually import the component itself. And I'm just going to grab this code, I'm going to copy this, and we're going to put it inside of our template, save that, and then come here and look. And there we go. We've got, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bigger. Size equals size. If I can spell today, -56. There we go. So we have typography styles, we have button styles, we have components working. The component properties are working exactly like you would expect. All those kind of concepts carry through. And again, if we wanted to kind of customize our avatar component even further, we have the API reference that kind of tells us all the different ways that we can customize and tweak and adjust that. So again, a really kind of cool way to kind of just get everything in place. It's very similar, very familiar to the same sort of process with using utility classes and style props and things like that as it is for Svelte. And so if you are a person that jumps between both frameworks, you're going to find it, fits like a glove. And if you are new, you're coming in brand new from the React world, this should be, again, very similar process we just showed for the Svelte and the things. Okay, so that's, again, kind of a quick speed run of showing everything working in the React and Next.js application as well. I will kind of quickly call out that we are only showing kind of like 2 installation methods here. So for very specific meta frameworks, do note that Skeleton will work in a variety of different options. It will work, the core will work in, frameworks that we don't technically support, like a Vue or Angular. You just won't have the components and things like that. If you're using a Vite application created using React or Svelte, the installation process should be very similar. We just don't have it detailed here yet, but we're going to look to add that very soon. Likewise, if you're interested in doing an Astro project, which can run a variety of different frameworks, the documentation site that you're actually seeing here is built on Astro. So Skeleton very clearly also works in Astro. So do kind of keep an eye out for additional options coming in the near future. We just want to make sure we're vetting that install process and telling you the proper steps to actually get things up and running. All right, so that's kind of what we have today. You're going to obviously notice there is kind of a short list of components here. It doesn't quite match. It doesn't have parity with V2 yet. That's kind of where we are in the state of the process. We are kind of slowly starting to kind of migrate from these big drastic changes and features that we had to implement to now just kind of primarily working on porting components, which will start going pretty fast, pretty rapid fire. So every 2 weeks or so, look for the new announcements from us on what features have been added. We're going to try to have at least 1 or 2 new components per week, if not more than that. Our per release cycle, which is every 2 weeks, I should say. And then again, please come on, install and try this yourself. Don't try to port your existing applications. Please don't use it in production. Just create a fresh new project and go through the documentation and try out some of the stuff that I showed today. There's plenty of features that I didn't cover. You can try those out and let us know what you think, either kind of in the comment section for this video, in the comment section for the written post that's coming out alongside this announcement. And then just generally send a GitHub issue or reach out to us in the Skeleton Discord. We're available in all of those different channels, and let us know what you think. What features you like, what features you don't like. If something's not clear, if you can't quite understand how you did this in V2, but now it works in V3. Those are the kind of support questions we're around to help with. So again, please try it out. Send us your feedback. That's the whole purpose of this public preview. And again, really hoping everybody enjoys it and is really as excited as we are to actually try it out and get it going. Still lots of hard work to be done, but we're getting close, and we'll keep you posted on where things go from here. So